I really thought I was gonna die. Like, I really thought I was about to die.
She lived, but her baby didn't. Pregnant and giving birth in jail.
I'm screaming, asking for help, begging for somebody to help me, telling them to get me out of this cell.
The horrors of giving birth behind bars and some of the inhumane treatment that comes with it.
If you give birth, are you in a state where you are shackled? Are you in a state where you can give birth with your mom, your aunt, the baby's father, a birth coach, or do you have a correctional officer at the top of your head and one looking up your legs while you're delivering your child?
In labor, in agony, in jail, insane. The baby is coming now on Blackland.
And now,
as a brown person, you just feel so invisible.
That's not fiction. Where we're from.
Brothers and sisters, I welcome you to this joyful day.
We celebrate freedom. Where we are.
Get on the ground!
I know someone heard something.
And where we're going.
We the people means all the people.
The Black Information Network presents Blackland with your host, Vanessa Tyler.
I'm screaming, asking for help, begging for somebody to help me, telling them to get me out of this cell, take me to the hospital. Everybody completely ignored me.
You heard Erica Thompson at the top. Back in 2021, she was pregnant and reportedly picked up for a violation of probation for a traffic citation. She gave birth to little Ava in her cell in the Alachua, Florida County Jail. The newborn was early, maybe as much as 3 months, in pain and screaming for help, something jail officials deny. Officials also say as she was being prepped to go to the hospital, the baby arrived. The baby was in distress. Little Ava didn't make it. Pregnant and incarcerated, two worlds that should not collide, but increasingly more Black women are giving birth while in custody, and that could mean she is shackled, handcuffed, while her baby is being born. Kimberly Haven is the executive director of Reproductive Justice Inside, an organization fighting for the dignity of pregnant women behind bars. Kimberly, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Vanessa.
What is it like inside for a woman who is pregnant?
The lack of adequate prenatal care is appalling. Add to that, if you are somebody who has made the decision about if, when, and how you want to have a family and you want to seek an abortion, that is routinely denied to you. If you give birth, are you in a state where you are shackled? Are you in a state where you can give birth with your mom, your aunt, the baby's father, a birth coach, or do you have a correctional officer at the top of your head and one looking up your legs while you're delivering your child? And then do you get to bond with the child, or is the child taken away from you? Do you get an opportunity to have those precious moments or breastfeed or breast pump? And so it really is a very huge multi-layered issue that doesn't get attention, primarily because we don't think about people being pregnant while they're incarcerated.
And increasingly, that number is going up. You mentioned abortion, and especially in southern states where abortion has virtually been wiped out. It's not even an option for many women. So they are forced to continue that pregnancy behind bars?
Yes. And actually, it's not just in our southern states. If you are even in some of our more progressive states, and I'll use Maryland for a perfect example, they don't tell you upon confirmation of your pregnancy test, these are your options. And so because there's a long-held ideology of people that are incarcerated that you are in fact property of your state. For instance, if you get a tattoo, you could be charged with destruction of property, of state property. So you falsely work under the assumption that you can't access an abortion. Now in Maryland, abortion is a protected right. However, if they don't tell you about it and you don't know to ask, then you are going to carry that child to term. If you are in a southern state, perfect example, if you haven't been convicted of a crime, you've merely been accused of a crime. Therefore, you should be able to travel to seek the reproductive health care that you want. But if you're being held because we have some of the most horrible and draconian bail laws, then you can't access that. If you're sentenced and your state says, nope, we don't believe in abortion, you're, out of luck, you are in fact out of luck. It's this multi-level, multi-layered nightmare that individuals don't know how to navigate. Advocates struggle with having to navigate.
As for Erica Thompson, at the time she decided to sue the Alachua County Sheriff's Department and hired civil rights attorney Ben Crump to represent her. Here is his news conference back in 2021. He says the jail broke the law, not getting her help and not saving her baby.
As we understand it, this is the first test of the state law known as the Tammy Jackson Act to see if they're going to hold detention centers accountable.
Ben Crump mentioned the Tammy Jackson Act, named after a woman who was held in the Broward County, Florida jail for a trespassing and drug possession charge, whose story is so horrendous. She says for 7 hours she was in labor calling for help, and when her baby came, she had to crouch down to catch her infant. Listen as she explains what's hard to even imagine.
It was horrifying. It was horrifying when she felt I had to bend down like how I'm bending down to pick her up and tell I'm sorry.
She tells her newborn she's sorry because the infant hit the jail cell floor.
I didn't even get clean before I had her, and also that she had hit the floor. I'd rather for my mom to be by my side at the hospital with me having her.
As she explains to local station WPLG TV back in 2019, what happened to her caught such statewide and national attention it prompted a law signed by Governor Ron DeSantis in 2020 that women inmates in labor must be taken to the hospital. Reportedly, the guards came in as she was holding her newborn. In this case, her little girl, Miranda, lived. Sadly, Tammy Jackson, who suffered from mental issues, died more than a year later from an unrelated, undisclosed cause. But her name lives on in a law to try and prevent what she went through from happening again. At least that's what it's meant to do in the state of Florida.
We need something national. We need something federal in terms of how women are treated behind bars.
There is some movement, and I applaud some of our elected officials in D.C., and I don't say that very often, I'm not going to lie, but, states still have autonomy. And so you can have a federal law, but a state could have a different law, and you're subject to state law. And while federal law generally trumps state, it depends on how it's crafted. Usually at the federal level, they will only work on issues related to individuals that are within the care, custody, and control of the Bureau of Prisons, not state facilities.
I see. Well, how big is the problem? How many pregnant women would you estimate are now locked up?
We really don't know because institutions don't report out. And this is something that we're working aggressively to try to get states to do. The problem is that states will report out and there's not a uniform way of gathering that data. So what we want to be able to look at is, did someone come in already with a pregnancy? Did someone find out that they were pregnant upon admission? And then when were they released? Were they released at what point during their incarceration or their pretrial detainment? Did this result in a live birth? Was an abortion an option? Was there a miscarriage? Was there a stillbirth? Whatever all of those things are, but states don't do that. And when we try to go into states to write legislation that would require corrections departments to do that, they will work to kill the bill because they don't want anybody seeing what they're doing.
Kimberly Haven from Reproductive Justice Inside has been instrumental in getting states to change what nobody really talks about, working with lawmakers, educating them about what's really happening, and getting them to listen to the labor pains and cries of agony bouncing off the walls of the cells on the inside.
And I wrote this bill about not placing pregnant women in solitary confinement, which is also just a harsher name for restrictive housing, but that's what they do. And a woman in one of our Western counties actually kept complaining. She was there for a probation violation of all things. And she kept saying, I'm going into labor, I'm going into labor. And they kept telling her, no, you're just in withdrawal, you're trying to get attention. She delivered her daughter in a dirty jail cell, slid the placenta out underneath the door, in order to get people's attention. Her daughter was born with a antibiotic resistant staph infection. She now has a federal lawsuit against the state of Maryland and against the local jurisdiction because we'd written a law that said you cannot do this.
Why did you get involved in all of this, Kimberly? Tell us your background.
So I originally got involved because of my own incarceration. And I got involved beginning with menstrual hygiene. We became the fifth state, because I wrote that bill, we became the fifth state in the nation to pass menstrual hygiene laws. But then it was, so now what do we need to think about? And pregnancy was always something that is one of those not talked about issues. And I saw too many pregnant individuals cycle through. And, you know, I know somebody whose child was born who came in and said, I'm pregnant, I'm pregnant, I'm pregnant. And they kept saying, no, you're just fat and sad. Honest to God, that's what they told the woman. You are just fat and sad. Finally, at about 6.5 months, she got a positive confirmation for a pregnancy test, even though she kept asking for to be retested. And her child was born on the spectrum. And she actually had an analysis done, and it was based on the care that she got while she was incarcerated, the care she didn't get while she was incarcerated. So it wasn't genetic, it was environmental. And so the more I hear about these stories, the more we not only look at menstrual hygiene, but we also look at, we've now changed our focus, that it's really the reproductive lifespan of incarcerated women and girls, because we're also not talking about menopause. Menopause is part of that reproductive lifespan, right? And so every day there's another state that does something that is just beyond the pale, that is just so egregious. And I just am thinking, how? Why? And so our work is not going away. Yeah. Our work is only amplifying. And as more and more of these draconian laws are put back in place and good progressive things are rolled back, we're going to see more and more impacts on individuals, families, and communities.
Now, how does menopause play into it? Because, of course, we know prisons are designed for men. So are there things that should be in place for women in menopause as well as pregnancy?
Yeah, I mean, again, we know that some women will need estrogen therapy. We know some women will need medications. But sometimes it's something as simple as making sure she has a fan, making sure she has actual access to ice. You know, these are things that are no-brainers.
I think probably the most painful of all is the way the babies, once they are born, whether, like you said, depending on the state, whether there's a correction officer in the birthing room or not, once the babies are born, how they are taken within 24 to 48 hours, and there's no breastfeeding, there's really no bonding at all. Those issues, they're just cruel.
And there's also the problem too, that if, let's say you have a 5-year sentence, you come in, find out you're pregnant, abortion's not an option. You do not want to choose that path. That is certainly your right and your agency. But then what are you going to do with your child? You're denied the opportunity to plan for it. Can this child go with the baby's father? Can it go with your mother, your auntie, your sister, your best friend, and be able to put those things in place? These are also people that are probably already on your approved guest list, your guest pass. So if they're already allowed to come into the institution to see you, why can they not be allowed to be with you in what is both the most beautiful thing in somebody's life, but also one of the most uncomfortable when you're by yourself and you only have mindless, faceless. These are not your routine OBGYNs. Then you have correctional officers. You don't know what to expect. You know, the hospitals are trying to deliver your baby, but they're not worried about what the policy is. They're not worried about what the state is. They're also just doing what they have to do, which is their jobs. But is that child given the opportunity, or you have the ability to have that child placed on your chest to create that bonding in those crucial moments after delivery before your child is taken away from you or your child goes home with your family member, right? And those play out. That is emotionally traumatizing to both the infant, to the family, and to the mother, because then she has to go back and serve the rest of her time without having had the opportunity to bond with an infant that she's carried for 9 months. That level of trauma is then not addressed. It is not even recognized within our carceral settings. And so how does someone work their way through that trauma while incarcerated without having the tools and the support to be able to do it? And then how do you come home with that?
You talked about some of the issues that you have won and some of the bills that you've written. What's next on the agenda for RJI?
Well, I think that what we're looking at is we still want to be able to partner with some of our states who, may be reaching out, because we wrote the very first in the nation model pregnancy policy manual for incarcerated. And that goes from the moment of a positive confirmation, we put it through COVID, we put it through release, and it covered every aspect of pregnancy care. Some states are reaching out and saying, what would it cost to do that? Well, that depends on the healthcare contract, and healthcare contracts are always going to go to the lowest bidder. So we broke it out like, this is best practices. This is what at the very least you should be doing. And then this is what the law says that you have to do. And so we want to be able to work with those states that are interested in doing that. We also want to be able to take the legislation and the talking points that we've been successful with and share that with advocates on the ground in the different states. But I do think that we need to work on a national campaign that puts the highlight on the reproductive lifespan of incarcerated women and girls, and really be able to force states to report out, to be able to make their manuals. How do you provide this health care? And you can have, as a Department of Corrections, a manual, but how are you enforcing that your healthcare provider is doing it? What's their manual? And trying to be able to create a national tracking system for that. That's where I think that RJI is really starting to focus now. And really trying to build that out so that at any given moment, someone can say, so what does it look like in Maryland versus Louisiana, for instance? And we would be able to tell them and put in some reporting bills. Again, I say this all the time, and I swear, Vanessa, I'm going to have a t-shirt made with this. I can't fight what I can't see, and I can't see what you won't show me.
You said that there's a minimum. What is the minimum that you're finding that at least all 50 states are doing for pregnant women behind bars?
They will give them prenatal vitamins. That would be the worst of the worst. Here is some prenatal vitamins.
That's it.
And we'll schedule you to see an OBGYN with the next time they come in. And if they order a sonogram, we'll get you a sonogram. But it's not there are benchmarks for healthy pregnancies and healthy maternal outcomes. And if they play fast and loose with that, then that plays out and potentially can be harmful to the individual and to the child.
How can our listeners help in this battle and help our sisters behind bars?
We would love it. They can certainly reach out to me directly at 443-619-9278. They can find me at Kimberly at reproductivejusticeinside.org. They can visit our website that we're currently updating because we want to put some of our trainings up there. And they can also ask what's happening in their own state. Because if you ask what's happening in your own state, whether it's at the state prison or you want to look at a county facility, get that information. And if you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to craft something that you can ask the questions. Gather that information and then feed it back to us so we can figure out how to work with you and work within your state for the betterment of our sisters. We're all for it.
Kimberly Haven, thank you for your fight and not forgetting about the women about to give birth inside.
Thank you so much, Vanessa, for keeping this issue up. And again, helping us advocate for our sisters that are on the inside and for our families and communities on the outside.
Before I go, I wanted to give Tammy Jackson the last word. She is no longer alive, dying of an unrelated cause a year after giving birth alone. No painkillers, no one rubbing her back or holding her hand, feeding her ice chips. Alone, catching her daughter as she fell from between her legs onto the cold, hard, filthy floor.
It isn't a joke when it comes to pregnancy. And if they don't want to abide by that, they should get fired, because I don't believe no woman should really have to go through that.
I'm Vanessa Tyler. Join me next Friday for a brand new episode of Blackland. Like and subscribe and get it wherever you get your podcasts.